Senator Grew,
Here.
Senator Rothfuss,
Here.
Senator Nethercott,
Here.
Senator Salazar,
Yeah.
Chairman Bateman.
Here.
You guys messed me up.
We're all here. Thank you. All right, Senator Nethercott, you want to take us through your proposed draft rules?
Mr. Chairman, I may. They're not my proposed draft rules, but they are our proposed draft rules based on our continuation of meetings on this very important topic. Good senators and to members of the public, when we took the previous version of the rule that we voted out last week to the Senate, there was continued concern over some of the language in the bill and wanted to provide additional clarity to that proposed rule that was previously voted out. And so, again, as a reminder, just for everybody following along, there are two prohibitions that the rule intends to address. One is receiving or soliciting campaign donations inside the Capitol, and more specifically within the Senate President's control, but just big picture inside the Capitol. The second issue that the rule intends to prohibit is prohibiting the solicitation and or receipt of campaign donations during session or when the legislature is in a special session. So those are the two concepts. And so we provided just some additional language really to address the concern of if a legislator or if a senator unknowingly receives a campaign donation in their mailbox, with no knowledge it had been mailed or the receipt thereby, and they just happen to pick up their mail, are they in violation of the rule? And they're just everyone trying to be compliant and to be consistent wanted to provide additional clarity to that. And so proposed language was provided concerning accepting or soliciting donations during session. And that language read before as follows: no senator shall knowingly solicit a legislative campaign contribution or accept a legislative campaign contribution by affirmative act on any day during which the Senate is in regular or special session. That language has been amended to read as follows: no senator shall knowingly solicit and accept by affirmative act a legislative campaign contribution on any day during which the Senate is in regular or special session. So a subtle change to the language, but addresses some of the concerns about an affirmative action associated with the acceptance of a donation. In addition, there's been another subparagraph added to the rule, which reads as follows: this section shall not apply where a campaign contribution is received by a senator under circumstances where the senator took no affirmative act to solicit the contribution nor to receive the contribution other than to discover that the contribution was made. And that provides some of that protection to the receipt of a campaign contribution in a mailbox that is completely unknown to the senator. There are two options that are provided, and I guess I would call on Mr. Shaw, our LSO attorney for the Rules Committee, to help provide that distinction between these two options. But I think conceptually, the public understands where we are and what we're doing here.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott. Yes, I think you've adequately described the purpose. In subsection B, the shorter of the two, which says no senator shall knowingly solicit and accept by affirmative act a legislative campaign contribution. The idea there is to require more for a violation of the rule, whereas the previous version would provide for a violation of the rule whether you accepted or whether you solicit for that campaign contribution. Here, the idea is to just provide a higher burden to get there, to prevent the circumstances where you do only one of the two, particularly where you discover or accept a contribution without having solicited it. So that's the idea behind that. And then in conversations with the committee, the idea was whether to not just put into plain language what it is that we're trying to accept from this rule, rather than try to be cute with the language in paragraphs A and B, but rather to just come out and say it. And that's the genesis of subsection C, that just says the intent of this paragraph, it shall not apply, where someone merely discovers that a contribution has been made.
Another cut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, good senators, the difference between option 1 and option 2 is paragraph B. And the higher action in paragraph B only applies if you knowingly solicit a campaign contribution. So you have to, in order to be prohibited, you have to solicit it. That's the application of option 1. Option 2 prohibits both the solicitation and the acceptance of an unsolicited campaign contribution.
Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions? Seeing none? All right, Mr. Shaw, anything else you want to add to the conversation?
Mr. Chairman, just one more thing,
Mhm.
and that is to Senator Nethercott's comment. That is the difference between the two options, and I think it's important. And I think it's important that the committee consider that under option 2, that has the or language, you accept or solicit, it is more prohibitive. There are fewer things, or it is easier to violate those provisions than when you have to conduct both. The important thing, though, and I think what makes that option still a viable option, is that it contains subsection C, which would make clear that it's simply discovering a contribution is not. But there are some substantive differences between the two options, and I think that needs to be clear.
Thank you. Question for you then on the meaning of solicit in this scenario. Can you walk us through what you envision that meaning? Is it outwardly asking for it, obviously, or is it go as far as having a donate button on a website? Is that considered solicitation under the meaning of this paragraph?
Mr. Chairman, it's an interesting question. I did go back and look at some what other states to do to try to figure out if other states have found a clever way or have gone a long way to address these issues. And the solicit is one, because what does that mean and how far does it go? What I found is kind of surprisingly that I couldn't find other states that have dug into this, and or at least in their laws or rules have really tried to parse out exactly what that means. I think in the interpretation of this rule, I think that it means it has to have a reasonable application. Clearly, in the most strict sense of the word, if you have a button on your site, on your website, that is a solicitation. I think it's different if you bring it up on every page, if you solicit it on Facebook and pay for an ad that promotes your button. That's a different kind of solicitation than leaving up a button that existed before the session, for example, something where you're not actively soliciting that. I do have to say to the committee that this rule itself doesn't provide a definition of that term. However, as a rule of the Senate, it's certainly up to the Rules Committee. It's certainly up to the body to decide what that means and to be reasonable about its application. And certainly we've done that in an application of our other rules. We take into consideration the circumstances of the alleged violation or the rules question and can factor that in.
Thank you. Discussion? Further questions for Mr. Shaw before we let him sit down? Seeing none? No? Yes? Good. Okay, thank you. Committee.
It's up to you. I get rejected every time I put something out.
That is just not.
Absolutely.
That's a hard line.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'll answer anything at this point. Senator Rothfuss.
I was confused at who was chairing momentarily. I'm sorry. My apologies, Mr. President. The concern I have about the first language, and maybe there's a way to tweak it, is since you've got the and clause, solicit and accept by affirmative act, it would technically allow me to either solicit or accept as long as I didn't do them both based on a language construct. That's not the intent really, but that is our language construct. And to the extent that we're trying to de-loophole this and get it where we want it, I feel like the option 2 then becomes better because it's clear that either of those is a problem. And then the only problem that remains with option 2 is that passive solicitation concept. And maybe there's a way that we can be a little clearer on that. But I do tend to favor option 2 for that reason. Because somebody could claim, oh, well, I only solicited, I didn't actively accept or something like that. And I don't think we want that. So those are my thoughts.
Any other discussion? Wait,
You'll have to pick one.
I can take a stab right now if you want. Are we ready for a stab?
Yeah, I'm ready for a stab.
All
Let's
right.
get the ball rolling here.
Mr. President, I move option 2.
Second.
Okay. Option 2 has been moved and seconded. Discussion. Amendments. Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, so I personally support option 2 and would readily vote aye on option 2. My concern is that we're going to have another meeting tomorrow night.
Let's figure this out.
And I don't want to. I'd rather put something out to the Senate for a vote, knowing that option 1 was at the request of some concerned senators who were, thought that the language was too broad. So I just have those concerns. I mean, my personal preference is option 2. As you know, we previously voted out option 2 with just paragraphs A and B previously. And so the only change to option 2 from where we were Friday is the addition of paragraph C. But the requested change from some members was option 1.
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
I feel like option C takes care of the concerns that the amendment to the B paragraph was trying to take care of, which is that it would be very reasonable for us to accidentally receive a check in the mail or something like that, right? That's the concept that we discussed, is how are we to control that a check arrives in the post office box? And the C paragraph clearly addresses that, which my recollection is that was the primary concern that was leading to the amendment in paragraph B. Now, the website solicitation concept, do we cover that in C sufficiently? Does the B paragraph, I mean, at that point, you're soliciting and accepting. I don't know how the B paragraph amendment up in option 1 would help you in anything on that either, because you're certainly not denying it. So yeah, I don't feel like with the addition of paragraph C, we're losing anything by going to option 2.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I discussed with Mr. Shaw kind of adding some depth to our rules, which you can find in other types of uniform laws or guidance, which provides a comment to the rule, and which is kind of the legislative intent. And so C is still written, paragraph C, which is beautifully written, thank you, Mr. Shaw, is still, I think, very much a lot of legalese, right? It's not plain language. And so what I could anticipate potentially going into a comment, which isn't necessarily appropriate for a rule, is really to actually plainly say, this rule does not prohibit the unknowing receipt of a campaign contribution in someone's, mailbox, etc., or online forum that has not been solicited or knowingly received, right? So like this passive receipt that you take no affirmative action about is there. I think what we're missing, however, and it may be too much for us to manage in these half-an-hour meetings that we get to have in conjunction with everything else in a budget session, is what to do when a senator does receive a campaign donation concerning a matter that is pending before a vote, right? And, is there any guidance to a legislator on to a senator on what to do? to avoid the appearance of impropriety or to avoid a rule violation. And I think that that is the next step in understanding how to deal with a passive donation that one receives. So for example, if I receive a $25 check from someone I don't know from somewhere and I have no idea that it's connected to any legislation and is that's probably not a violation of this rule. If I receive a campaign donation in my mailbox from an entity that has pending legislation, how do I handle the receipt of that? Should I report that to the Senate leadership? Should I, how does that get managed when something happens to me that I can't control, but I am now responsible for providing transparency for the integrity of the issue? So I'm happy to entertain further discussion on that.
Senator Drew.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We all know why we're here. Something happened in this building last week that was abhorrent to all of us. And we're trying our best to carve out a rule to make sure that we say in no uncertain terms that we don't want that to happen. Now, through that process, we've asked a lot of other questions, and you're right. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, if I'm running, I've got a website up and it says donate. And then at the end of each week, I do a update of my legislative activities during the week. Am I soliciting for contributions? Of course I am. I'm trying to update my website and say nice things about what I'm doing. So am I soliciting? Probably. The point is, we are faced with a situation that we're trying to correct right now on the ground and let everyone know that we disapprove and that we are putting together a rule to do it. What I would say is, let's vote on option 2. I think we closed what we considered a trap. And the trap was someone who may not be so politically friendly to us just sends a contribution in. And by accepting it, we violated our own rule. And then they say, aha, Senator Guru violated the rules. We all know he did. He did it, So I think we've tightened that up. And I also think then we can maybe ask our rules committee later, maybe even during the interim, to say, let's take a dive and let's look around and say, how can we solve this problem with the websites and all that? But for today, and to get this out in front of the body, I say approve option 2, send it to the floor.
Senator Nethercott.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree with Senator Guru, and I think that that's the proper way, is to, again, allow us to develop these rules. I anticipate them to be more in this subject line as we develop a more robust rules book on this topic, and look forward to doing that in the interim, perhaps with Management Council, and it's a joint rule to be proposed. My only concern is option 2 just still makes everyone very uncomfortable. And so I'm prepared to give it to the body to look at, as I've been all week. But I'm going to need some cover and some advocating on this, because I do not want to schedule another meeting. I'd just like to get this voted on and get something in place before we're out of session. And for clarity for Mr. Shah, does this rule only affect us now during session, or would it, would this go into our permanent rules? My understanding, this would be our permanent rules and start again at the beginning of next session.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shaw.
That's correct. It would go into the permanent rules, and it would be the default rule at the beginning of next session until we amended it out or changed it on the 5th day of the next general session.
Great. Thank you. Follow-up? Okay, before we vote, I'd like to entertain some public comment, if there is any. Anybody from the public that wants to opine? Seeing none. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? I think we have a move. So it's been moved. It's on the table. Want to remove it?
Yeah, I'll withdraw my prior motion, which was out of order.
Yep.
And make a motion now
Okay.
to adopt option 2.
Okay, motion by Rothfuss,
Second.
second by Guru. Discussion? All right, call the question. Will the chief clerk call the roll, please? Or the chief clerk's here, but secretary, how about you call the roll for us?
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Nethercott,
Hi.
Senator Rothfuss, Senator Salazar.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Aye,
5 ayes.
thank you. All right, thank you, committee. Any other business of the committee before we adjourn? Seeing none, this rules committee has been adjourned.